Welcome back to another
Welcome
episode of Wealth with the Walkers. We're so excited to have you back. Today, we're going to be talking all about adoption.
Yep.
We're going to talk about Bennie's story, what happened when he was a baby, and how that has shaped him into who he was called to be today, and how this story is intertwined in our own story as a married couple. So we're super excited to talk about it and
Yep.
for you guys to get to know Bennie a little more.
It's so important to be able to have these conversations and to share your story of where you come from, where some of the things that you've gone through in your life, and just being able to share some of the things that you've had to endure in your life. And so I'm so excited to talk about my adoption story, and it's a journey.
So we're going to just jump right in, and I would love to know, how did you know that your story was different than other people? How did you feel different growing up?
Well, I was raised in Chicago, the west side of Chicago, one of the best cities ever, but I was raised in the hood, and
How bad was the hood?
it wasn't that bad, but it was.
Did you hear gunshots at night?
You did hear gunshots.
Did you hear sirens and police?
You hear sirens and fire trucks all the time. And I got used to all the noise. And then when I moved to the South, I was like, why is it so quiet? It's kind of creepy.
This is true. When it was our first time to take me home, he was so embarrassed of where he lived. He was like, oh my gosh, I don't know. I don't want you to.
I was not embarrassed. I just wanted to make sure that you knew that what you was about to step into. Black man from the west side of Chicago who was a little hood, but loved Jesus.
Okay, bless God. But it wasn't as bad as he put out for it to be. I was like, oh, this is not bad.
It was a beautiful residential, what do they call it? Typical residential home. I knew my story was different because my siblings, I grew up with 4 other siblings. I would say 5 other siblings actually, because my mother who adopted me, she actually foster cared 2 children, well, really 3 children, and she had 2 of her own, and she adopted me. And so I knew that our family unit was really different than the kids in the neighborhood. Number one, the kids in the neighborhood, they really didn't even have that many parents. They were staying with auntie, grandma, uncle now. For the kids that I went to high school with, it was really different. Our story was different. And the kids who I went to high school with, they really kind of had like a family unit of a mom and a dad, and no really like adoptive siblings. So I knew that my story was really different when I knew that I was adopted and there was other families like mine.
So tell us about your adoption story. Like what happened when you were born? What happened growing up? How'd you find out? All that.
I found out that I was adopted probably 7 or 8
Wow.
or 9. And it used to happen when I found out when my siblings, whenever we get into a little fight, they'll be like, that's why you're adopted. And I was like, what's an adoption? Like, what is
My
adopted?
God.
What does it mean to be adopted?
Lord help.
And my mom was like, yes, you're adopted. And they are too. Like they were also in the foster care system. All of us was kind of like in that together. We loved each other so much. But I found out that I was adopted around 7 or 8. And my mother told me this story. So when I was born, my biological mother had drugs in her system. She had crack. I think that's what they used to call it. She was on
Crack
drugs.
is whack.
Yeah, she was on drugs. And I was taken away from her because when I was born into the hospital, they had to remove me out of her care because of the amount of drugs that was in my system. So when I was removed from her, a lady at my grandmother's church was a caseworker. And she asked my mother, because she saw my mom with her children at the time, 2 of her biological children. She said, you are really good with kids. Have you ever thought about, fostering or adopting another child because you're so good with kids? And my mom said that she asked my older sister, say, do you want a younger brother or sister? And she said, yeah, I would love a younger brother or sister. And so that's when my mother said, yes, I'll take them in. And so she actually received me at 1 week old. I was a week old, and I had to do something in the hospital where they had to do some surgery on my eye before I could be released, is what was told to me. And so I actually wasn't adopted until about the age of 3 or 4. And my biological mother would do visits, and at a certain point she just stopped doing the visits. I was adopted, and I would say I was initially told about 13 years later, I met my biological mother. And that in itself was a movie.
My God. So in the process of being fostered to adopted, like how was your attachment with your biological mom and with your adoptive mom?
I was close to my adoptive mom. I was very close to her. You're about to make me. Why are you laughing?
You about to cry?
No, I was really close. I was really close to my adoptive mom, and
Okay.
so I was really close to my adoptive mom, and I was super attached. And it also shows that I really have, like, even older now, how if someone is close to me, I'm really attached to them.
Mm.
And it also, another side that I've seen is I have this fear of people leaving my life. So when I was younger, I was really attached to my adoptive mother who raised me, and I was attached to her at the hip. I did not want to go with anyone else in my family besides my mother. And it started to really affect everyone around me because there would be times when she would take me to work and I would just cry if I wasn't next to her side. I would cry for hours if she put me with another family member and it wasn't with her. Like all of these different things with attachment, I really struggled with growing up. And so now I see, being in my 30s, how being adopted and like an attachment disorder, how that affects me now. If I get close to people in my life, I really trust and I'm very loyal to them to the T.
You are.
I'm extremely loyal and I am attached to the point where if that person is like with me, I'm with them, like 4 flat tires. Even if they disrespect me, I'll have a heart to forgive. You know what I mean? Sometimes that's one of my,
you have too much grace, too much mercy for people. Yeah.
But I see how, me being attached to my biological mother, how that has affected me today. Sometimes I have a fear of people leaving my life as well, a fear that they're going to leave because of my biological parents. So I'm very hesitant to get close to people until I really feel that they're safe.
Yeah.
And when I feel that they're safe and I could be myself and I can, be friends with them.
I feel like you're quick to get close to people, though. I feel like you literally, I say it all the time, you can be a mayor because of the amount of people you talk to, know, friends with.
Yeah, I agree, but I think it's to a certain extent.
Yeah, it's like a level of
surface
proximity. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
But I can befriend a lot of people.
Yeah, but who really knows you? No, that's what I'm saying. It's
Yeah.
not. I'm saying that there's probably, you can count on your hands the people who really know you versus people that you're friends with, your outer circles versus your inner circle. What lies do you feel like you believed and carried into adulthood, becoming a man and growing up knowing that you were adopted?
I think one of the lies that I believe growing up, it was like a little small voice in the back of my head was, hey, if you come into my life, you're going to leave. And when are you going to leave? How long are you going to be in my life? And so because I've experienced that before, in the back of my head, I always thought like some certain amount of friends or people who I looked up to, eventually that they were going to leave. And so I really had to be healed from rejection. And I think rejection is something that you always have to look for when you have been adopted and have experienced abandonment. Rejection is something that you're just going to have to make sure that you're daily renewing your mind and making sure that you know that you are a son and you are a daughter. And so one of the lies that I believed was eventually they're going to walk away and they're not going to be my friend. And then also, too, I wasn't worthy of them staying. I wasn't worthy of these people staying in my life to be able to receive the fullness of who I am and what I bring to the table. I think that was always something that I believe that was told to me by the.
So tell us like the journey of meeting your mom, your biological mom, and what was the emotions after that came from that?
So as I was saying earlier, I didn't meet my biological mother until I was about 19 years old. So when I met her, I used to work at McDonald's. Shout out to, fast food workers out there. I used to work at McDonald's. I was just getting.
What was your favorite food at McDonald's?
That's a good question. I love those chicken strips with some buffalo
Didn't they
sauce and barbecue
discontinue
sauce.
those?
Yeah,
Why?
mixed strips or something like that.
Mixed strips.
The best food ever.
McDonald's food is just.
So I was coming home one day from work at McDonald's, and my older brother came to me and said, there was a woman that came by the house looking for you. And I said, what woman came by looking for me? He was like, she's an older lady and she left her number. So I called the number and I said, hey, this is Benny. You came by our house looking for me. And she said, hey, I am Melody. Can I speak to your mom? And so I gave the phone to my mom, and my mom gave me back the phone after she was talking to Melody. And she said, I got the phone. I asked her, where are you? Just all of those like beginning questions that you would ask anyone when you're trying to get to know them. Where are you from? I asked her, was I mixed with anything? Because my hair was like,
That's funny.
I also asked her, why now? And where do you do? Where do you work? All of those type of questions. I felt like it was answered prayer because I did always wonder in the back of my mind who my biological parents were.
Right.
And so when I met my biological mother over the phone, she then told me, hey, I would love to meet in person. And when I met her in person, I experienced a different emotion. For some reason, I became angry when I first met her. Like, why now? Why did you come now into my life? Where were you? Why did you get me up? And so anger was my first emotion when I first met her. And there was a little bit of distance between us. Part of me wanted to know because every person wants to know where they come from. And then part of me was like, no, I'm good. You don't deserve to be in my life anymore. After we met in person, I asked her, who is my biological father? Where can I meet him at? And she actually told me, I know who exactly your father is because you look just like him. She introduced me to one of my cousins, and one of my cousins who I was introduced to, she drives over there by where my father used to stay. And my cousin was on the porch and she looked up and was like, hey, this is, Durrell's son. And I was like, who's Durrell? That was my father's name. And my cousin at the time was like, wow, you look just like him. This is crazy. So it was almost like an Antoine Fisher movie where he introduces to his biological family and everybody's so surprised to see him. And so he took a picture of me at the time and then told my family. And then I met up with my father's family, I think probably about a month later. And it was incredible. It was so incredible to meet them. I met my biological mother, my biological father's mother. And she was in her 90s at the time. And now she's like 103, 104. Yeah. And she's still living. She's still moving pretty well. And yeah, I met him. I met his family, but I was not able to meet him because he passed away from cancer when I was a little kid. And so that's something that I still wrestle with today is the guilt and the sadness and disappointment that I don't get a chance to meet him from where I came from with my flesh and blood. And so, yeah, that's something that I deal with a lot. That's a little bit about how I met my biological mother as well as how I met my biological father.
How does it affect you now that you haven't been able to meet your biological father?
I think what affects me now when not meeting my biological father is I don't have anyone to be able to call to say, hey, how do I, cut the grass and get rid of my weeds, or how do I deal with, our foster daughter and do, just certain specific things that a father is supposed to know how to do. And so I now look to other mentors to be able to help me. But just like different questions about, where is he from? What are some of the fatherly advice that he might have for me in his lifetime? And just being able to sit and honor my father is something that I struggle with, not being able to feel.
How do you think it's made you into a better father, not having a father?
I think there is a reliance on the Lord to be able to be my heavenly father, to be able to love.
So how is your relationship now and then with your biological mom, Melody, and your siblings? What does it look like?
When I also met Melody, I found out that I had, I think, 7 or 8 other siblings from my biological mother. Shout out to my siblings if you watch this. And it was awesome being able to meet them. I think I was the number 4th or 5th child out of like 7 children. And so I met all of them.
Now, were they any of the other ones put up for adoption?
I was the only child out of all of them put up for adoption. Some of them went with grandparents and some of them came back after they were with the grandparents and was raised by the grandparents and still had relationship with Melody to be able to contact her. But I was the only one that was like a closed, private, like adoption. And so, yeah, it was great seeing them. In some ways, I kind of look like my biological mother. In other ways, I really look like my dad.
You look like your dad. You don't look like her.
Like a split image.
Yeah.
It's kind of creepy.
It is creepy.
Yeah, how much I look like him. And so I met him, his family, and it was just the most beautiful thing. I met my biological mother's family. It was great. It was awesome. And so right now we're still building a relationship. And with my biological father's family, it's phenomenal. And I'm still building a relationship with my biological mother's family.
Awesome. And your bio mom's family, you even stay with them? You're in Memphis.
Biological father's family.
Father
Yeah.
here.
My biological father's family, he had about, I think, like 9 or 10 siblings. And they are incredible. I have a really huge family.
Yes.
And they are absolutely incredible. You've met them. They are beautiful people. And I actually stayed with one of my aunts. As soon as I met her, I only met her like a year from when I first met her. And I ended up moving to Memphis and I stayed with her for several years. And we are very tight. And so it's amazing how God writes your story.
And redeems it.
Redeems it and he completes it.
Yeah.
And allow for me to be adopted, for me to be taken care of for like over 19 years, and then meet my biological family, and then be an extension of what a foundation that was already laid for me. And being able to just meet all of my family is a beautiful story.
So what does healing look like practically for you today? You've been through a lot of trauma. You've been through a lot of things that could put people on a bad path, but you're on an amazing one. So what is healing?
That's a good question. I think healing is a journey. And I'm so much better than what I started off with. I think one of the things that I really struggled with was rejection and abandonment. And so what that looked like was feelings of not being, feeling belonging, just feelings of, being rejected by people I didn't even really wasn't rejected by. And that is in every facet of every environment. And so I've had to be able to know that I am accepted by the beloved. I am accepted by the Father, and I am a son. I walk in sonship of our Heavenly Father. And being able to take on that identity of a son is something that I've been walking through for the last 5 years. And being able to also show up for my marriage with knowing that I'm walking in the identity of a son and not a bastard. And just being able to love you through that healed space of my life has been something that I'm continuously walking through healing for. And through every season and through every age, I am literally learning more about walking in my identity as a son.
That's good. As we close, just as a reflection, what would you say if you could say something to your younger self, a little boy who was just found out he was adopted, not with his biological mom? What would you say, knowing all that you would endure and who you would become today?
I would say to my younger self who just found out he was adopted, your story is going to be beautiful, and your story is unique and it's different, but it's so special. And the reason why it's so special is because God wrote every single detail of how you would come out of persecution and so much triumph just being born. And God saying there's such a mandate and a purpose on your life that I have to remove you out of chaos.
My God.
And then bring you into a place where you can be healed, where you can be loved, where you can be fed, and you can be in a safe place so that you can know your identity. Mm-hmm. And then be able to be raised up by someone who may not have the same DNA, but they have the same spirit.
Come on.
And so I would say to my younger self, you haven't made that the Heavenly Father thought so much of you to be able to tailor-make your story, to be able to know that every single detail of your life has already been mapped out, and it is of goodness. You're going to have some bump in the roads. You're going to have to seek the Father for sonship in any ways and parts of your heart that was not normal. Because when you are adopted, there is some things that are not normal of the normal family unit psychologically. But the Father is so good to where he makes sure that you don't lack and that he makes up the difference. And so I would say to my younger self, trust the Lord through every detail and know that you are accepted, you are loved everywhere in which your feet will stand on, in every season, in every place, that you are loved. And don't ever think 1 minute that you are not loved. And I just want to say to someone who's maybe listening and maybe you were not raised by your biological family. Maybe your grandmother raised you, or maybe you were raised in foster care. Maybe you were raised in somewhere other places, or you were raised from house to house. There will maybe be parts of your heart, parts of your identity that may have gaps. And maybe you experience a lot of brokenness. Know that the Father's with you and he knows every single thing that was not in your life that he's going to be able to give you through himself. And you may be searching, and part of my problem was even going through my journey of just trying to figure out who I was and my identity and my sonship. I gave over my identity to things that was not a part of who I am, that only the Father could do for me. And so I want to speak to you and say, hey, the Father is going to do everything that is insufficient in your life just for you. If we just seek him and give our lives to him fully, then the Lord can be able to make up the difference in our story and turn our test into a testimony and complete what he started in our journey, because the enemy will not have your story because he didn't have mine.
Come on.
And if he could do it for me, I ain't no respecter person. I'm from the streets of Chicago, the west side of Chicago. Surely if he could do it for me, he could do it for somebody who may be listening.
If he can do it for Benny, he can do it for anybody listening. And I think that's a beautiful story of redemption and how the Lord, he calls the broken into family. He calls the lonely into family. He calls the helpless into family. And you are a modern day miracle. Literally, you're the story of Moses in modern day.
Wow,
so
my God.
We're so excited.
Well, I get some royalties. But in God's doing for me, I was adopted. Now I'm married for 7 years, and the Lord has kept me through every season. I knew that his hand was upon my life because of my story.
Yeah.
And because of my uniqueness. There was some brokenness in that story, but his hand was upon it. And he's using my story, and he's going to use my story to break chains off of people who have been struggling with rejection and abandonment. And who have just feel like they've just walked in shame of their story. I don't think I mentioned this, but I didn't feel comfortable sharing my story when I was younger because I was so shameful to be adopted. I was so shameful to be adopted. And I remember when I was in high school and I was competing for Future Business Leader of America in public speaking. And
also, Benny went to college to be a public speaker.
I was a speech communications major. Shout out to the communication majors out there, and we're believing the Lord to use your gift and the art of communication in your life.
But his academic advisor told him to change his major or have a minor at least in business, because you don't make money being a public speaker when you just graduated from college. You ain't got nothing to talk about.
Hey, some people doing it on social media.
They are
making millions.
Shout out to the influencers.
Back in our day, Instagram wasn't popping like that. But I believe that the Lord used my story in such a unique way. And I was about to say that I was in Future Business Leaders of America. And the prompt was tell about a story or a tribe that you had to overcome. And my speech was about being adopted. So the very first time that I ever talked about being adopted. And it's crazy because one of my friends told me years later that she only knew I was adopted because when I printed out my speech, she read it.
Wow.
And we used to share like a printer room in the high school. And I printed out my speech one time and she never told me that she read it. And years later, she told me that she read it and knew that I was adopted.
Wow.
And so, there's something that I had to overcome at her in high school and at a young age of just telling my story.
I feel like it's recent, kind of.
Yeah.
Like you have never been like super open about like where you came from and who you are.
The Lord has blessed my life to where I don't have to live in the streets and in the hood. But I think
you're on the other side in the test. My God, you're on the test.
Choose where I want to live, thankfully. But I think it's important that people know.
It's very important. And I think this your story is a big reason why we chose yes to foster care today.
Yes.
Knowing that out of all of the families, all of the places you could have ended up, you ended up in your adopted mom's home and a place that you could be adopted. I think it's just so beautiful. So I can't wait to share on some future episode about our foster care journey and how his story impacted why we've said yes to our now little girl who we don't know how long she'll be with us, but every moment really counts. So
thank y'all so much.
Thank you so much for joining. This again is Wealth with the Walkers. And yeah, if you like this show, if you want us to continue, won't you comment, share, subscribe to our channel? And so
we'd love to hear if you've been through anything that is similar. We'd love to hear your feedback and what you've overcome, or you're still in the test. We want to hear from you, and we'll definitely connect with you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
God bless.
Talk to you next week.
Peace.